Anstoragir.
Put me under the spot. Okay. What do I say about myself? Well, I'm Armenian. I'm born in the United States, in the Boston area. I've been living in Armenia since 2004. And I'm a writer and editor. I've made some insignificant short experimental films during the years. I've written a novel, several short stories. I have about 3 blogs, and I've written extensively about Armenia. Well, experience shows that reading and writing go hand in hand. If you want to be a great writer, you need to read. The more subject matters you read, obviously, the more worldly you're going to become, right, as a writer. So it's to your advantage to look at anything. I mean, even if it's a newspaper, like the New York Times, for instance, which I try to look at every day at least once a day, usually 10 or 12 times a day I'm looking at it. At least you have that constant, inflow of knowledge. If you're writing fiction, of course, it's important to read other fictional authors, but of any kind of reading material that you can find, basically, especially now with the internet, everything's at your fingertips, so there's no excuse. In terms of how much the youth in Armenia read, I find it very odd that there aren't very many bookstores in Yerevan. So it's been troubling for me to see that there is no readily, there's no access to physical books. For many years, I was wondering how university students particularly, are actually learning, because you don't see people walking around with books. My generation of people in my circle, at least, do read readily, and they do have really access to books, new titles. So there's always this thirst for more knowledge, for views. From my dealings with people my age, living in Armenia, people who are citizens of Armenia, I see something strange in that after a certain point in time, you learn, and then you're done learning, now you work. And you don't have to read anymore. So this is kind of problematic when you're practicing medicine. This is quite odd. It comes from a lack of awareness and a lack of, obtaining, up-to-date knowledge, especially about your practice. There's this situation that exists where people have felt as though they learn only to a certain level, and then they have to back up and say, okay, now I'm working and I don't need any more books because I've read whatever I need to read, no matter how outdated it might be now. I know what I know, and that's it. I mean, Armenian society in the Republic of Armenia, in Soviet Armenia, there is a legacy, there is a culture of taking pride in acquiring and investing in books and having a library. I mean, many homes that I've been to, there have been substantial libraries. There's always been this hunger for knowledge as far as of what I have understood. I was talking to my colleague yesterday, and he was telling me that in the Soviet times, just in the Gentram district of Yerevan, there were at least 30 bookstores. What happened? Why are they gone? Why isn't there a need to acquire new books? Where are those? It's sort of like a strange paradox. You have a lot of books in people's homes, but now the bookstores are very few and far between. I'm not understanding why there's been a lull in the need or the desire to read, if it even exists, if that does exist. I'm not convinced that it does exist. I think the current, the youth now, the Armenian youth, the university-aged youth, I think they know in order to access the information that they seek, they have to do it using the internet. It's more practical to do it. They do it at their fingertips. And if you have a smartphone, you can pretty much access any information you want. Now, whether or not they can make the distinction between what is academic and what is not, that's something that that needs to be studied. I think the internet certainly helps with reading classics, because especially when you have the novels, old novels from the 19th century, 18th, 19th, 20th century novels a lot of them are online because they're out of copyright. There's certainly, it's a lot easier for your generation to access literature, world literature, than it was when I was going to university. I mean, I don't want to sound like an old man, but when I was going to school, we had these card catalogs. We had these long drawers that contained the titles they were classified by this system called the Dewey Decimal System. It involved a lot of researching and pulling things up, pushing them back in, flipping through cards, taking escalators and stairs and, running around. Now it's like within 5 seconds you have what you want. Your generation has it really easy. I think your generation is plagued with what to read. Okay? Because we have these smartphones, because we're so connected, we're so close to the internet. We actually are the internet. We're getting to that point where we are the internet. Okay? We have such a connection to it that I think we have this dilemma as to what we need to read. I mean, I could be reading an article. I don't read articles the same way as I used to 5 years ago. I start reading an article in online, a news article. I start reading, it's very interesting, I'm getting into it, and halfway through, not even halfway through, I'm like, wait a minute, I don't have time to finish this because I have to read another article that I saw a link to before. So let me just stop this, maybe I'll come back to it later, I'll start that other article. But then you're not able to finish that either, because a tweet is going to come any second, it's going to tell you to read something else. And then it's like a chain reaction. You can't finish anything. So that's the problem that I think the youth, has in terms of how much attention do I focus to one task. So if we're talking about reading books, you need to figure out, with all this other visual, stuff going on, there's so much happening at once, you need to figure out how to allocate time to reading literature. So it's a question of finding the time, basically. That's the problem. Assuming, you can't download them by other means, which we're not going to discuss. We're talking about legal, right? Actually paying for a book that somebody worked very hard on writing. Students who don't have the means to actually buy electronic books are at a disadvantage in Armenia. What do they do? How are the libraries in Armenia, the state libraries? They probably don't have any recent titles from the last 10 years, right? It's safe to say. It's a problem. It's definitely a problem here. We don't know about the new writers, the new Armenian writers. They're not promoted. They have to often self-publish. And they don't really make much on the copies they sell anyway. So the writers that we have today are unknown because they're not promoted properly. They don't know how to promote themselves, or they don't feel as though their work is valued. Nobody's going to read it. So that's another problem. That's another issue. I think there needs to be some kind of a renaissance in terms of a revamping of the literary world. What does it mean to be a writer now? In 2016 in Armenia. Where are they? Where are the great writers? How do we promote them? How do we put them on the world stage? Who is responsible for cultivating new writers? I think writers are pushed forward by critics, by society, by readers, by literary communities. Mostly by literary communities that exist. There is a literary community here. Of course, there is one. I mean, it is true, we do have this obsession with, the old classic Armenian writers. And we tend to forget about what's going on now. What do you even think? It doesn't seem like much thought is even being given to what's happening right now. Who is the Tumanian of today? There's got to be somebody out there. I've been fortunate to see some really exceptional students, some real exquisite talent. I've also read some, there's some some fantastic, young budding writers who are attending AUA. So I have a lot of faith in this new generation of scholars, and I have I have high expectations. I really have high expectations of your generation. That you're not going to wait for others to do something that needs to be done, but you yourselves are going to take the reins and work hard to make things happen, especially in when we talk about the literary sphere. So there's a lot to be done, but I know you're going to do it. I have no doubts about that, and you just have to just work as hard as you can to make it happen.